that institute days because I think I get to do the fun part. I don't have to talk about camp sessions or standards-based grading, even though those things are very important. I get to do something I think I'm pretty good at, and that's the motivation piece. So over the last couple of years, I think we've had some really good presentations. Last year at this time, we had several staff members come up who were district teachers and were able to thank people who are currently on staff. I think that was one of the most powerful things I've seen in a long time. I think Katie's presentation from the beginning of this year, again, her message to us about her rehabilitation and what the standard rehabilitation care was and her, I'll call it alternative rehabilitation, how that's what we do. We look at students and we think this is what they should be capable of, rather than this is what the norm is. A real powerful message. So today we have another what I think is going to be a really powerful message. We have a former student in our district, Freedom's very own Mike Beddingfield, and his mom, Tracy, are going to speak a little bit about Mike's story. And I'm not going to share too much because I'm going to let them do it. But Mike's currently a senior at Morton West, and I think their message is going to be equally powerful. So please join me in welcoming Mike and Mrs. Beddingfield.
Hello, my name is Michael Beddingfield. I was born in Chicago on May 2nd, 1997 at Ravenswood Hospital. Lived with my mom and dad and my grandma at my grandma's house till I was 2 years old. We moved out just to move back in 6 months later because our apartment flooded with 3 feet of water. When we moved out of my grandma's house for the second time, we never ever returned to live at my grandma's house again. I started preschool at the age of 3.5 years old, then went to a half-day kindergarten. I attended Preston Elementary School in Chicago. I had some difficulties in school, not listening, fighting with peers, and fighting with teachers. I can remember in kindergarten, I threw a chair at my teacher. I missed hitting her, and I hit the aide instead. I was sent to the office where they called my parents, and my mom came. We all spoke. I didn't receive any repercussions, just a warning. In first grade, I punched a kid in the nose and broke his nose. I did receive a 2-day suspension. I didn't care for school, especially when it came to reading and writing. It was very difficult for me. I remember the teachers telling my mom they believed I had ADHD and some anger disorder. My mom took me to Children's Memorial Hospital, where I went through some testing. And was put into group therapy. In second grade, I was fighting with more teachers and peers. In fact, I remember fighting with this one Polish boy, and it got bad, so bad, that the next day, the boy brought a knife and threatened to kill me. My mom took me to 16th Police District. We had to talk to the police. Yes, I was scared. By the end of second grade, my mom and the school sat down in a meeting. At that point, the teachers notified my mom that I needed some extra help with reading and writing. Comprehension, too. By third grade, I had an IEP in place, and in a self-contained class with 7 other students. My mom also started me on medication for ADHD. I couldn't understand why I was in a different class setting than everyone else. and starting on medication. I can remember throwing up a lot when I started to take medication. It made me feel really sick and tired and have a high heart rate. So again, doctors changed it to Strattera. That was the worst one. I remember waking up one night and going into my parents' bedrooms and waking them up and telling them I felt like killing myself and other people too. Well, at that point, my mom pulled me off the Strattera, took me back to the doctors, and started me on Concerta. Been on Concerta ever since. As I settled into my new life of being on medication and in a self-contained class, I began enjoying school. Don't get me wrong, I hated going, but at least I wasn't fighting no one. I should mention home life. It wasn't always the best. My parents fought. My dad was always doing his own thing. So it was just me and my mom for the most part. I did play baseball for Portage Park starting at the age of 4 years old. And one thing I always knew was that I will play up with the older kids. Also, in 3rd grade, my parents were expecting another baby. I was happy but nervous, not knowing what to expect. I felt like my life was going on very fast. Medication, self-contained classrooms, and not a happy home. Always up and down. And now a baby coming, I felt like my life was moving so fast. My brother was born on March 10th, and I was there at Lutheran General Hospital. I remember asking my mom if she wanted more ice chips because she was in so much pain. My parents even got into an argument over my mom having a shot. Needless to say, my mom won that argument. When Sammy came, I was so happy. I helped out all the time. By 5th grade, I began being mainstreamed out for some classes. So yes, from 3rd and 5th grade, I was in a self-contained class with 7 other students. So when I was told I was going to be mainstreamed out for classes, I was fine and kind of just went with the flow. In 4th grade, I had a sister. I remember my grandpa was dying of cancer here in Berwyn. I remember driving out here almost every day to see my grandpa. I also knew that when my grandpa would die, that will mean moving out here to Berwyn from Chicago, which I didn't want, which meant starting a whole new school. I was so scared. Transitions have always been hard for me to accept. I like to live my life on a schedule. I know that cannot always happen, and because, yes, I was going through so much at such a very young age. At this point, my parents had my sister while I was still in 4th grade. Not the happiest, because my dad was in it and out of jail. A few times being mainstreamed out, and at had Preston from kindergarten to 5th grade. My parents, especially my mom, prepared me the best. The first day at Freedom, boy was I scared. I only knew one person who attended Freedom, Adrian Diaz. I was worried about the transition into a new school, being the new kid at school and the new kid on the block. The day Mom and I had to register for school, Miss Freeman was there and she helped my mom with paperwork and reassured my mom about the transfer paper from Preston on the way. Miss Freeman, my mom, and I were standing in the school library. Miss Freeman shook my hand and said, "Well, Mike, it's a pleasure meeting you. Welcome to Freedom." And we will do everything that we can to assure that your transition here to Freedom is a welcome tradition, is a welcoming. If you need anything, don't hesitate to come find me. You're a great-looking young man, and you'll fit in just fine. We also spoke about the Chicago Cubs and me playing baseball. First few weeks were difficult. I was in Miss Rossi's class, which I was in a self-contained class for the first several weeks. At this point, my parents had a parent-teacher conference. My dad kept asking me, "What am I going to hear, Mikey?" I always told him, "It's good." Finally, that night came, and Miss Rossi, my parents, my brother, and my sister, and I went to the meeting, and Miss Rossi praised me on how well I was doing. On my classwork and transitioning into the new routine. Oh, I was an outgoing kid, enjoyed sports, meeting new people similar to myself, and meeting friends seemed to be easy for me. And all I did was sit in the chair and tell my parents, "Ha, see, I told you everything was just going to be fine." I remember my mom almost crying to Miss Rossi because my mom was so proud of me and telling Miss Rossi, "This is the first time at a parent-teacher conference we've been to where all we heard was positive feedback and nothing came back to be negative." How Preston would mainly tell my parents was everything negative, when Berwyn schools have nothing but positive information to give. Miss Rossi stated, "No, no, no, at all. Michael is not like that. He is a very well-behaved student, stays on task for the most part, and we are working on self-organization skills. And I'm pleased to say, I believe Mike is ready to be mainstreamed out for more classes." My parents and I were so happy. Such a different experience from pressing teachers. Shortly after being mainstreamed out for math, science, and social studies, I basically stayed with Miss Rossi and Miss Hughes, who was the aide, only for a comprehension, reading, writing skills. Miss Rossi always believed in me. even when I would doubt myself. Always gave that extra push, never gave up on me for that. I was able to accomplish my goals I had, such as 7th grade when I no longer needed an IEP. In 7th and 8th grade, I had both Miss Laura, which was the science teacher now, assistant principal at Freedom Middle School, and Miss Baboka, the math teacher, who went above and beyond to help me in my education and achieve my goals. In the first semester of 7th grade, we had our IEP, and I was called into the meeting, and that's when my parents and I got the surprise of a lifetime. We all have come to an agreement. Looking at my test scores, homework, schoolwork, you are no longer in need of an IEP. That was one of the happiest days ever. Finished 7th grade off strong, no problems, teachers always asking if I needed extra time and just being wonderful with me. You can say I was spoiled since I had the same teachers for 7th and 8th grade. And they were all aware of my learning disorder. They would all give me extra time and help me in my subjects and work. I played basketball with Mr. Wilms and Miss Pravda. I also played volleyball in 8th grade with Miss Collins. For biology in 8th grade, Miss Laura decided it would be fun we all made sushi in her class. All I remember is it had seaweed and some other stuff. After we made it, we all, as a class, got to try it. Let me just tell you, it was really gross. The seaweed was nasty. Miss Laura's facial expression was funny. She tasted it, and it was over gross. You could just tell. Guess you had to be there. But yeah, it was funny to see her face. It was also fun to try and make it. The taste testing I could have passed. I have a lot of memories here at Freedom from teachers, administration, and last but not least, the friendships that were created. I remember for a while where there was a rumor going around school where people thought me and Mike Cadella both were brothers from another mother. Why, you ask? Well, basically because we were both white and we both had blue eyes. So everyone thought it would just be fun to start a rumor going around saying that we were brothers. Or when we all attended our 8th grade graduation dance. And at the end, when the DJ announces last dance and time to go, Josh Shania, Mike Cadella, Alex Pius, Stephen Martinez, and little Joshua Desma. All of us huddled up and started crying to see each other again. It's funny now to look back at it and laugh, but for real, at that time it was heartbreaking. Another one of my favorite memories in 8th grade. I spent a lot of time with Mr. Caregivers during lunch, and we talked a lot about sports, high school, and about real life adult situations. Mr. Calegars would tell me, if you want to keep starting food fights, you're going to find yourself in handcuffs or without a school. He even told me how after high school, you must need to have a job or a career. Because if you don't, you can't always rely on your mom and dad to live at home until you're 65. Mr. Calegars and his talks that he had with me were very touching because I could relate myself to Mr. Calegars a lot. He taught me so much in just 3 years, but I'm glad to say I had a principal like Mr. Calegars, and I'm also thankful that he is someone that motivated me and someone who I could look up to. It wasn't just one person in Freedom Middle School that helped me. It was the entire staff. It was the close friendships. It was my parents that has helped me through everything the most. After graduating, I went on to Morton West High School, where I struggled the first year. I had no IEP or a 504 plan. My parents and I didn't think about having an IEP or 504 plan. When I started at West, I had been doing so good the past couple of years, and yes, I know I would have a rough transition from middle school to high school. Just because I was never that kid where school came easy to. My grades were really rough. I always did just enough to stay on the baseball and basketball team for school. But then it happened. I wasn't doing enough, and I was at risk of being benched for baseball. I remember speaking with my coach, Mike Casey, and he told me if I didn't ask for help, how can anyone help me? At that moment, I knew I needed help again. So I went to my mom, and from there, my mom contacted the school for a meeting to start an IEP again. I was ashamed. How can this be happening to me? I have been doing so well, and now high school, I cannot get my stuff together. My parents spoke to me and explained to me, don't be ashamed, it's okay, everything's gonna be just fine. It took my mom the entire rest of freshman year to get an IEP with my record, with my accommodations I needed. Sadly, it didn't take effect till sophomore year. So what my mom did was email each one of my teachers I had for sophomore year, individually explaining my learning disorder and to please be considerate to give me extra time in work and in tests. And you know that I worked. And you knew that work didn't come easy to me. and my mom had to talk to the teachers more often than ever. Wanted to, but it paid off. I wasn't benched. I played for baseball my freshman year, and teachers helped, just as my mom asked. If any of you knew my mom, you know her very well, that she can be a very pushy and demanding person. So school was going well. Playing up for baseball, doing well in school. I was a good student, had fun, and kept to myself for the most part. I was supposed to play varsity baseball as a sophomore, but didn't. Coach Casey told me he was keeping me down sophomore year, that I wouldn't be able to play on varsity, that he's going to keep me down with the sophomores because I didn't commit to the baseball program. Was I pissed off? Yes, I was. Then it came my junior year. Did I commit to the baseball program? Sure did. I was squatting 350 and benching 175. I was finally understanding what my parents and coaches and everyone around me told me an entire time. I was now a junior, enjoying life, doing well in school, and couldn't wait for my junior year for baseball to start up. I had scouts coming to see me. I had possible scholarships that I had spoken to. Man, I was living life, and then it happened on March 9th, 2014. I had a traumatic brain injury, an AVM to be exact, causing me to suffer a seizure, a stroke, and 2 cardiac arrests. And I was in a coma for a little over a month. And here's my mom to tell you what actually happened.
Hello everyone, my name is Tracy Beddingfield, Michael's mom. Many of you know me. Michael on March 9th had an AVM, which is an arterial venous malformation. What that is it something you're born with in your brain. So when you're in the womb, the baby's in the womb, developing, your vessels, everything is sectioning off. What happened with Michael is that his created a Charlotte's web in the back of his cerebellum. Pressure, it can rupture anytime. You would never know if you had an AVM unless your brain was scanned. The only way to have your brain scanned is seizures, traumatic brain injuries, so on and so forth. On that day, Michael was lethargic that week. We'd asked him if everything was fine. He said yes. 10:15 at night, we spoke to him. He said he was okay, watching TV, so on and so forth. At 10:31, he came upstairs, crying that his head hurt so bad that he wanted me to take him to the emergency room. At that point, I thought, okay, this is Mike. Every couple Sundays, I don't want to go to school Monday, I got a test. I had to do something, I gotta play this off. I checked his pulse, heart rate, pupil dilation, everything was normal. Everything, temperature. Only abnormal sign was perfusion. By 10:33 p.m., I was on the phone with 911. My son he started hallucinating, tearing my clothes, wanting me to take him to the hospital. And I was affiliating this socially, basically a migraine headache possibly. He's never had a headache, so I suffer from migraines. This is very common with migraines. You are very sick. You just basically want to curl up in a ball and die with a migraine. Within 20 seconds of being on the phone with 911, my son had a seizure and was hallucinating first. He hallucinated. We couldn't make clear words. He was ripping clothes, so on and so forth. Then he had a seizure while I was on the phone. While my husband, his father, was holding him while I was on the phone, my son had a stroke. He had a cold blow. There was no life to him. He was pronounced dead. I had to perform CPR on my child. By the time, it felt like forever before EMTs got there. When they did get there, they stabilized him. By the time they got there, he had a faint, very faint pulse and little life to him. They brought him out in a gurney, put him into the ambulance. They sat out there for another 5 minutes, where I found out later that they had to paddle my son to restart his heart. The police were there as well. The police, the first questions they asked me, what kind of drugs is he on? What is he taking? This is come to find out, this is a very common question that police ask. One, he's 16, he's a healthy student, plays baseball, da-da-da-da. No drugs. If it's not drugs, it's child abuse. We had to flip my son's room while my son was dying and basically was dead. When they got him to McNeil Hospital, he was pronounced DOA. I know many staff members here that I've spoken to personally heard last they knew my son was dead due to the information they received through 911. Michael was on life support for over a month at Rush University. While we were at McNeil Hospital on March 9th, it was at this point 11 p.m. Still not knowing what was wrong with my child, they ran all kinds of tests on him. They did a full toxic screening, everything came out clean. And that's when they told us it was something in the brain. There was pressure causing your son this injury. Come to find out it was the AVM. When we found out about the AVM, and we found out that you could be born with this and not know it, that was more scary than ever. Because at that point, being mom, what did I do wrong? How did I not pick up this? They had to do emergency surgery in order to save my son's life. McNeil Hospital, Dr. Dar called 45 surgeons, and only one surgeon, Dr. Salehi, was willing to take his case. Because the AVM was located in the left cerebellum on the brainstem of the pressure. They knew he was already on life support, and going in was actually going to end his life if they weren't careful enough. Due to Dr. Salehi coming in approximately 47 minutes later, prepped him for surgery immediately, they removed the back of the skull, letting the swelling swell out and set it down. After he was stabilized, we went to Rush University, where we stayed there for a month. Rush University, Michael ended up with pneumonia because after having a seizure, he aspirated and his right lung was about to collapse. Something I did find out with x-rays, they lag. They lag for days. They did x-rays from March 9th all the way to March 12th through 14th, and that's when we found out he had the pneumonia. So now, not only was he on life support, but now he's at risk of losing a lung, possibly. We never knew his outcome, what was going to happen. On March 17th, Dr. Maftakar, his neurosurgeon from Rush, performed yet 2 more surgeries on his brain. They went in, they started to remove the AVM, just to see that there was more AVM. So they had to sew him up, put him back into an angiogram, get that map going, go back in. Overall, the surgery was approximately 17 hours. 17 hours we sat, wondering what's going on. Doctors were great, nurses, staff, etc., wonderful, keeping us in the loop. When Michael came out, we didn't know what to expect. Nobody could tell you what was going to happen until he woke up. By April 4th, there was no more that Rush could do for him. He no longer needed intensive care. He needed rehab. He was transferred over to Marion Joy Rehabilitation in Wheaton, Illinois. Michael still wasn't awake when he was transferred over. Michael was still in a medicated coma at this point. Michael's actual awake date was April 12th of 2014, where he can actually wake up and say, where am I? I should go back a little and Rush. Mike had 2 cold blues in Rush. He ended up with a trach, he ended up with a G-tube. So when we were at Marion Joy, he did come about April 12th, trying to talk. He couldn't figure out why he couldn't talk and what was his device in his vocals. We got through it. We did get through it. There's a lot that goes into it. Rehab, intense rehab, insurances, fighting for your child to get the services that your child needs was a battle itself. Not mentioning that I had 2 other children that many of you here know that I was not able to see for 3 months. That I only saw my kids once a week, if maybe twice a week, and on a weekend, if I was lucky. Because my spot and my place I needed to be was with Michael to make sure he was receiving the care he needed. Michael went through many therapies. To this day, he's still in speech therapy. He still has PT and OT as well. But I have to say, Michael's come so far in less than a year. Losing 3 months of his life, basically. When he was discharged, he was on a wheelchair, a gait belt. We had the trach removed on May 21st. He was discharged May 24th. So he had the trach the entire time. Very self-conscious today. He's very self-conscious of how he acts, of how he looks, how he represents himself. He knows he's not the same, and he puts a lot of pressure on himself. And as a parent, you can't imagine what that does to you. To watch your son or child suffer and know there's nothing you can do to help them. The staff at More Than West, as well as District 100, went above and beyond to help my family. From offering to watch my children, to taking them home, to cooking meals for us. And I couldn't ask for a better school district. I couldn't. My family and I could not ask for better teachers, administration, and district alone that went above and beyond the calling to help my family in a time of need. And to know that there were so many people out there who were willing to help and take their time to help someone else when they didn't need to. Michael is now walking, as you can see, no gait belt, no wheelchair. His speech is slowly coming. He has ataxia on the left side due to the stroke. Ataxia is tremors. That will never go away. You learn to control it, but it never goes away. Doctors say it's such a fun, their words, it's so fun to work with patients with ataxia because it's a constant learning experience for them. There's no medication out there that can help it. So with that being said, there will be information. Mr. Calabrese and Ms. Lar have information about AVM's brain functioning that they will be emailing to the entire school district here. If you have a student sitting in that chair in that classroom who just needs somebody to reach out to them. We don't know, I can personally speak from a teacher standpoint, we don't know the background of the students. We're never going to know 100%. But if that one person, such as Ms. Rossi did, was just tape and kept pushing Mike and pushing Mike. He finally broke and was like, yes, I need help. Yes, this is me. So on that note, Lucy's doing well. He has a long recovery. Doctors predict 100% recovery with Michael. They do predict him to be on the field again. It's up to him for the hard work and dedication now. So I will let him finish. Thank you.
I am going to graduate on time with the class of 2015 as planned on June 7th of this year. I have planned for college and some universities as well I have applied for. My FAFSA has been completed since January 2nd of this year. I am very excited to start my new life, my new chapter, my college life, that is. I want to say if there's anything the teacher, administration, staff, in general, can do, research, 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 and research. The student has to have research with them. If you're not sure, ask questions, open up to the student, because you never know if there's one of me sitting in that chair in your class. Say this, because I know there's new teachers in our district straight out of college, because I have a younger brother and a younger sister who attend Kaminsky, and they come home and tell me about their day, and they're always saying, I really don't like the way she's teaching or he's teaching, because this and that, they're too hard. Don't be afraid to ask questions and research the student and the family. I want to say thank you. Thank you to Miss. I want to say thank you. Thank you to Freedom Middle School teachers who took that moment and asked me questions. Never gave up on me. Thank you to Mr. Callers. For helping me and keeping me under his watch. I also want to say thank you to certain teachers and my coach at West who never gave up on me. That's something to a lot of teachers and parents. Stop pressing you once you hit high school. I was lucky though. I had my mom, my dad, and teachers who pushed me. But for the teachers who didn't give up on me either. So thank all of you for your hard work and believing in me. I also thank you for listening to my story. If anyone has any questions, I am willing to answer them. Or if anyone would like to speak to me privately to talk, I will also do that too. Thank you.
I'm not going to use the microphone. Am I loud enough? Yeah? Good. I took a couple of notes because I knew of Mike's story before I invited him here, but I didn't know all of it. His point and Tracy's point about us not knowing our students is really meaningful because we do have 22, 25, in some cases 30 kids, right, sitting in front of us, and we don't know their background in terms of what their families are going through, moving from house to house because there's floods, right, moving in with parents, having parents that are dealing with difficulties themselves, right, not always being able to see mom or dad, moving from school district to school district, having teachers that maybe are not looking at potential, but looking at negative stuff, right? That's kind of what I heard about his experience in Chicago. And the cool thing that I hear time and time again about this district is that's not what we do. Right? I hear the teachers that Mike talked about. He talked about Miss Freeman on day one, making him feel really comfortable, going out of her way. And that's just a freedom story. But I know that story happens at Kamensky and Irving and Hiawatha and every other school that I didn't mention, right? He talked about Mr. Wilms and Miss Pravda. He talked about Miss Laura and Miss Babolka. He talked about Miss Collins, who's now Miss Dowdle, working here at Heritage. And if I missed anybody, I was trying to take notes as he was talking. He talked about all those relationships, right? All those people who invested in him. He talked about me, right? Getting after him. Mike, you're going to either stop this or you're going to go somewhere else. He talked about Coach Casey, who wanted him to play varsity baseball, and then Mike didn't do what he was supposed to do. So what did Coach Casey did? He took the courageous approach to say, you know what, I'm not going to coddle you, Mike. You're not coming up. Sometimes teachers, we have to do that as well, right? I love my kids, I love my students, but sometimes I got to be that guy that says, you can't do this. Those are also meaningful. Mike talked about actually being spoiled at school. Those were his words, right? He didn't say I was spoiled because I got 79 Christmas presents, right? He didn't say I was spoiled because we went on this awesome vacation. I was spoiled because I had teachers at school who cared about me. I heard Mom talk about 44 doctors who elected not to help her son. And I thought to myself, man, that must be a really great profession that you can choose not to help somebody. We don't have that luxury, right? Because we work in public education. Whoever lives in Berwyn walks through our doors, we're gonna help. Right? Sometimes that's hard. Mom talked about not being able to see her kids, but only a couple times a week. Because she needed to be with Mike. Again, you might not have known that if Sammy was sitting in your class. We have opportunities every time we're in front of a kid. Every time we're in front of a kid, we have an opportunity to reach that person, to let them know we care about them. We can do it with our words, we can do it with our actions. It makes a difference. You had a young man who was willing to stand up and talk in front of this many people. How many of us in this room have talked in front of this many people? I would bet it's probably 15% of us. But here's a 17-year-old boy who was pronounced dead at one point in his life, who had the courage to come up here and talk with Mom and Mike. We helped him have that courage. Because when I asked them, they didn't bat an eye. They said, yes, we're going to do it. And it was just kind of happenstance, right? They showed up at Freedom like 3-4 weeks ago. Mike was doing some fundraising, a healthy person. I tried to be, I didn't buy anything, I did donate a little bit. And hearing them talk to us, it clicked. This was our story for today. And I want you to remember that. Remember what they went through, because kids in your class are going through some of those things. Are they life-threatening medical conditions? Maybe, maybe not. Are they parents who are struggling? For sure. Are students dealing with learning disabilities? Absolutely. We work in a tough place, in a tough profession. We do. There's no getting around it, guys. Teachers are getting beat up every time you turn around, right? If it isn't pension, it's test scores. If it isn't test scores, it's all of this stuff. You are making a difference. Just remember that, okay? Thanks, everybody.